this is a pride of St. John. This beer goes around the world and is famous around the world. I have friends who come here just because, wow, I can get Moosehead where it's made, the Holy Grail.
Well, I don't think anybody can deny that this has been planned from Moosehead's perspective for quite a while.
I mean, we have to stay together. We have to stand up and fight and push back, or, you know, the white-collar guys are just going to continue to take and take and take.
They recognized that you couldn't use the same tactics to fight that strategy. In other words, they thought outside the box, if I could put it that way.
From the family's backyard, Susanna Oland's legacy and recipe for October Ale was handed down through generations of Olands. Successive heirs created a brewery that survived world events that brought down many enterprises, countries and technologies. Through Confederation, the First and Second World Wars, the globalization of the world economy and even the War on Terror, Moosehead has remained a major force in the global brewing industry. Susanna Oland's pioneer spirit passed through 6 generations of descendants, keeping the company going and keeping relationships with workers well grounded. Because 6 generations of workers, of grandfathers, husbands, daughters, brothers, sisters and neighbors, have organized with a collective voice to come to the table with the Olands to address issues through an open, honest and fair relationship. It wasn't until the winter of 2011, after 144 successful winters, that the relationship changed dramatically.
Hereby pledge my word of honor. That I will be true to this union. And its principles. As long as I am a member thereof. Welcome aboard.
This notion of a union as the collective voice of the workforce that is able to articulate needs and to give feedback to a company that is vital for its success.
Trade unions are a fundamental component of democracy. It's not, it's not an elective, and it's that way. That's an accepted fact almost everywhere in the world.
I think one of the interesting things about the local 362 story is that they came to the edge 2 years before and then pulled back and used those 2 years to prepare themselves, their members, their community for what they knew was going to be a very large confrontation.
This is something that definitely has been in the works since, well, actually I believe it's probably been in the works since the day we came back to work 2 years ago.
The 2008 negotiations were the resumption of talks that had ended in 2000. And that year there was a 3-day lockout where the local believed that the employer really bullied them into a settlement. After an 8-year collective agreement, we went back to the bargaining table in 2008, and after a very intense and hard negotiations, it ended up with a strike vote, and 97% of the members voted to go on strike over the issue of post-retirement benefit. We came back to the table. The result was a 2-year deal, really a truce period, where the parties were committed to speaking to one another, trying to resolve the issue through a labor management joint committee using an actuarial consultant to try and address both sides and their concerns. And there were a number of changes that occurred in that period from the last negotiations leading to the December 2010 commencement of negotiations. There was new personnel and management. Actually, there was a new president installed, the 6th generation of the Moosehead family. And we were told that, just watch, there's going to be some changes that are going to happen here. And we anticipated them that they're to be constructive changes.
We knew that the post-retirement healthcare benefits were going to be an issue because we were in this committee process with the company in the 2 years leading up to the end of
collective agreement.
Before we even got to the table, we knew that this post-retirement benefit piece would be a huge part. And we certainly did a lot of work in trying to find a solution to not only ensure that the employees would have the ability to have post-retirement benefits, but also to give the company the ability to shed huge amounts of liability, as well as have their ability to secure loans that they needed to do infrastructure for the brewery.
Through the course of 2009 and 2010, we met on 19 different occasions. The party said we need to solve this before we get to the bargaining table. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible, and the 2010 negotiations began in late December of that year.
The parties exchanged bargaining agendas on December 22nd, 2010, and the decision was made that we would come back to the table on January 3rd after the holiday break. The goal of the employer at the bargaining table, and certainly in the period before the lockout, of course, was to claw back that benefit in some way, to make it a lesser benefit so it would be less expensive for the company. And of course, the members of the local had the opposite idea. You know, they wanted to maintain the benefit because it was something that was very important for them and their families in their retirement years. They had counted on this, and they wanted to be able to maintain it. From January 4th until January 11th, 2011, the parties bargained ambitiously deep into the evenings. We exchanged nearly 50 proposals back and forth between the parties on those dates because, again, you know, the company had expressed a desire to get things moving, and of course, you know, we were there again in good faith to try to get a collective agreement concluded. On January 11th, we were surprised to learn that the company had applied for and was successful in applying for having a conciliation officer come in from the Department of Labor to oversee things. I think in what the company felt was a move that might speed things up. The first thing to happen after January 11th was a break. The parties took a break because the conciliation officer that the company had applied for, his schedule was such that he wasn't able to be there until the beginning of February. Really slowed things down, which, you know, we found curious because it was contrary to their stated objective, which was to get things done quickly.
We talked about it as a group, saying, now why would a company who wants to get a deal stop communicating but start to ramp up production?
You know, we were feeling some pressure from some of the membership as to, you know, what are we doing in here running around the clock for the company itself to prepare to lock us out? Why don't we take a strike vote and go out? And anyways, we stayed on the high road and said, no, we're gonna make the product, we're gonna negotiate in good faith, and we're gonna get through this.
At 10 o'clock, I got a call from the conciliation officer saying that a representative from the company wanted to meet with me urgently. So I went to the meeting expecting to hear that the proposal we were scheduled to receive around midnight was going to be delayed, and maybe it would be the next day, or maybe they had it ready early. I was expecting that we were going to continue the bargaining process that in the past couple days before that we're going fairly well. There was progress being made. Of course, I went to the meeting, and the company representative, you know, definitely to my surprise, and I'm quite certain to the surprise of the conciliation officer, you know, served me with the lockout notice, indicating that the lockout would begin at 10 p.m. on Sunday, February 20th.
To have that hammer dropped at that time was totally unexpected.
I can say that I was very disappointed in being served notice that we were locked out at that time, because we had made a lot of gains, or not a lot of gains, but a lot of movement that day. We had gone significantly further than we had on other days, and we thought that we were, you know, heading in the right direction.
moving along, and just to think that, you know, it's all over and done with or whatever was quite disappointing, because, you know, nobody's there to be locked out or
to have this all set up and plan, you know, what appeared to be planned, because they were all in place, everything was set up, the barricades were up, you know, it was almost like, well, we've done the groundwork, so we might as well go through with it now, because this is what we have to do.
They served the notice and then said, okay, so we'll see you in a little bit to hear our counteroffer. Like they thought that was just no big deal. We just a matter of fact, give you a piece of paper, and then, you know, you guys aren't going to be upset about that, and we'll just talk some more.
It's the membership that decides their fate and their future. The 5 of us try to negotiate to the best of our ability, but then it's the membership themselves that choose whether it's acceptable or not. So that Sunday, we took back their final offer, and overwhelmingly, I think it was 99% voted to say that the offer that the company put forth was unsatisfactory.
You know, do we want to negotiate with a gun to our head? As you know, we got that 24-hour notice that we can lock us out, but so at any time they're going to pull this card on us. It was something the membership needed to know.
Essentially, a lockout is a strategic move by management to take a step before the union might go on a strike. It's sort of saying, we won't wait for you to make your move. We will time the move when it's most conducive to our needs and our wants.
The lockout is just another manifestation of this sort of attack on labor.
It didn't seem like a logical move on their part. It didn't seem like to me, looking at it, I would assume that if you had movement and people were going, and, you know, because it was a struggle all through negotiations to get any sort of movement. We'd sit here for days and never move, not an ounce on anything, and if anything moved backwards. When you kind of got some momentum going, it seems counterintuitive to me to, you know, slap a lockout notice down and expect movement to continue.
What we're seeing is employers using fierce tactics to try and get what they want.
It has been 24 hours since the legal notice of lockout was issued to the local. As the clock struck 10 p.m. on February 20th, 2011, the members of Local 362 were officially locked out. By 10:01 p.m., the first lockout shift had begun, and the brothers and sisters of Local 362 together walked out into the cold winter night. The reality of the lockout began to sink in.
For those of you that are fans of Moosehead's beers, but there is a lockout underway at the brewery in St. John.
A lot of the prep work when the lockout began had been completed from 2008.
In 2009, after a near strike, the local acquired an office space within steps of the front doors of the brewery. The location provided a stable base and easy access to the front line.
The office space that we newly acquired was well used. We had a full kitchen set up. It was just wonderful. We had places to warm up. That was that bit of stability in there where the members felt good. They had a place to go. And they even came when they weren't supposed to be there because it was so comfortable.
Back as far as, I think, 2006, we started with a defense fund. It was extra dues that each member would pay in, and at some point, hopefully we wouldn't need it, but it would be there if we did. And after 2008, where we nearly came to a work stoppage, we saw the way the company was going, and we figured it would be a good time to increase it a little more, because it did in fact look like at some point we're going to need this defense fund to help us through a bad time.
These funds, coupled with payments made to the members through their parent union, the New Brunswick Union, softened the blow of having their paychecks taken away. Together, these provided financial security for the families of Local 362.
The membership defense fund comes into play to help out when members are in need.
With an office and weekly paychecks secured, work was underway to organize the picket line.
Bernice did a lot of work on this in 2008, paperwork, developing sign-in sheets, work schedules. We had in total probably 10 picket captains.
Well, they kind of were the kind of the father figure of their group, because it is a stressful time, emotions are running high, it's easy for people to make mistakes and whatever, but I mean, we've seen a lot of character from all of our picket captains.
Most members don't start off as union activists. They usually get a job and discover they're union members. So it really starts with helping members find ways to be involved in the union.
My name is Pat Fitzpatrick. I've been working at Moosehead for 26 years now, and I was a captain on the line.
And we did try to group so they could carpool from certain areas. That played a big part in when we selected people to, we tried to select, the people, like if there was groups in the plant that we knew that, they were best friends or whatever, anything to attract people to want to be there. I'm going with my best friend, so that's perfect. I'm going to spend 8 hours with my best friend walking up and down the street.
Before sunrise, management arrived earlier than usual for a week of work. The heated cars were met on the streets by a determined group of Local 362 wearing their mittens and boots. It was just the beginning.
They had some first-time security people, I guess, to a picket line, just like we had first-time picketers to a picket line. So there was some hurdles right off the hop to get over.
It's normal procedure where a representative from the union would sit down with the police force to hash out a plan. There is only so much, we have right to do when we're picketing in front of a place of employment.
We instilled from the very beginning that we didn't want an injunction. We didn't want to limit our members on the street, on Main Street, or any of the exits. There's 3 or 4 different exits and entrances into Moosehead, and we didn't want to limit our presence there.
We build up a good relationship with them right from the start.
Received a call from a representative of the company saying that within 24 hours the company was going to shut off their contribution to the Blue Cross plan for the membership.
There is only 2 things you really have to do to be a successful company. You have to take care of your customers, and you should take care of your employees, and that's all your employees. My name's Andy Fox. I've been at Moosehead Breweries for 29 years. There's an electrician, I'm a tradesman.
People oftentimes don't realize how much suffering goes into that for people to stay the course and fight for what's right. And there's a lot of stories, unfortunately, where there aren't success.
Obviously, this could have been devastating, and I think that the company was counting on that.
The board of directors unanimously supported that we provide coverage through the membership defense fund. So we use those funds for that.
What I think they underestimated was the solidarity of the 8,000 members of New Brunswick Union to step up for the 170 members of Local 362 and to be able to foot that bill for that service so that they could continue with coverage during the lockout period.
There's power in the factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lessons of the past were all learned with workers' blood. Mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trenches full of mud. War's always been the bosses' wiser.
The first week, was confusion. And just looking at some way to get the membership in a cohesive form and to get the public to buy in. We needed to do something, and I'll tell you, when I first brought it up, my biggest fear was that it wouldn't work, because getting unions and getting public support in times like these, it's been shown that it's been difficult to do. Our family day, the intention of it was to bring our families in and let them see exactly what was going on in the process. It was also a way to demonstrate to the employer that we are family, these are our family, and they were having a serious effect on all of them.
When they had to leave the plant the day that we had those barbecues, they knew it wasn't 180 workers out on the street, they knew it was 180 families.
The reality of the family day was it was a chance for the people in the background who were as affected as anyone else. I mean, I know personally in my own family, we were used to a certain expectation of weekly, money that we had, and amongst ourselves as a family, we sat down and decided that we were probably going to do stuff different. So it was a great opportunity, educational-wise, to, my children won't ever forget, that lockout, right? But they also get to learn the effects of it, and it's a great teaching tool for for your income that you have, and why you have it, and all of that stuff. So Family Day was a natural fit to what we had to do. Plus, when the public looks to say, hey, look at that, why is that little kid out there? The public get to put the faces together, because to Robbie's point, it wasn't 180 family or 180 workers, it's 180 families.
We want to work! We want to work! We want to work! We want to work! We want to work!
Love you, give me a hand kiss. You need him to give me a kick in the face. Love you.
Daddy, what is stolen?
Love ya. Love ya. No, I don't know if he does.
The challenge for us was finding a decent day to have it on, because there wasn't too many of them.
More rain this evening and tonight. That'll switch over to scattered snow flurries with gusty winds overnight as the temperature falls to -7 degrees.
They probably took on the 5 or 6 strongest weeks of winter that we had in this area in a long time. And they stood shoulder to shoulder with it, and the community stood shoulder to shoulder with them. And I think that really showed a lot of people that hey, there is strength in numbers.
These guys were out walking these picket lines in some of the most adverse weather that I've seen in a long time, and they showed a lot of solidarity and a lot of respect for one another out there on those lines, and it was truly sound to see unionized people sticking together underneath those conditions.
They stood out there in the snow and the cold. The day I was there, we were there a very short time, because a meeting was canceled, because my members wouldn't show up to a meeting we canceled.
The driving conditions are poor and cancellations have started coming in as we face another blast of winter weather. There is a storm warning in effect with up to 30 centimeters of snow expected, combined at some point with rain and even some freezing rain. Meteorologist Richard Zarowski says the winds will also pick up, with gusts from 70 to 90 kilometers an hour overnight.
They stood out there many nights or days in the cold and in the rain. They were pretty dedicated. I don't know, sometimes I thought they should have stayed home.
In the first week, it was complete chaos. We had, because everyone wanted answers, because no one had all the answers, right? So our own members were going through chaos.
By week 2 of the lockout, the voice of the community was getting louder. Citizens of St. John were donating coffee, homemade cookies, hand warmers, money, and even their own time.
I remember one Friday night, it was one of the worst miserable nights out there, and one of our local city firefighters taking his time out of his night of storms, bringing his four-wheeler in that had the tracks on it, going up and down Main Street, plowing it from one end of it to the other to help us so that we didn't have to track through the slushes and stuff.
It was a cold day on the line, and a car pulled up with a 20-year-old. And he just rolls down the window and he hands us $40 and he says, boys, go get some coffee.
Different occasions where on a late shift or a midnight shift, someone would drop by and pull over their car, open the door, and have 40 coffees there. And if you only got 20 guys in the line, there's only so much coffee you can drink. So you're handing it over to the security guards and hot coffee on a cold night.
As community support grew, the solidarity of the local continued to build.
There was a group of us watching one of the back gates one night that we actually stopped and made a snowman, put the second ball up on top and put one of the Union and Proud shirts over top of it, put the last one on, put a few rocks on, and a sign of it that said, Local 362. It was a way for a few guys to kind of have a laugh in the middle of the night.
Solidarity is just standing together. I mean, it's not to cut your wrists and bleed to death, but it's standing together in a common issue and to come up with a common resolve.
Meanwhile, away from the picket line, a different battle was brewing in the media.
Company spokesman Joe Levesque says at this point it's a wait-and-see game and either side could make the next move. But he says the company will get back to the table when the union is in a position to negotiate sincerely.
If you didn't hear 3 rumors a day, you started 3. Right up until the day they locked them out, the brewery was the absolute best friend of the media. Oh my goodness, you could call them and they'd tell you anything you wanted to know, everything. And suddenly, after the lockout came, I'd have had better luck getting information out of the Kremlin.
I mean, we have a dominated media here in St. John, in New Brunswick. And that media has shown repeatedly anti-labor tendencies, which is, part and parcel of being here in New Brunswick.
All the major media sources have a very narrow view of the role of unions. They don't even accept, for most of them, that unions should exist, notwithstanding the Declaration of Human Rights that calls for free trade unions and women and men to be able to join unions. The 362, by thinking outside the box, took a giant step forward in order to break through that myth, that nonsense that's been told to the public.
What is it going to take for you to undo the padlock?
It's going to require the negotiating team from the union to come to us and say, we are now serious about resolving this issue with you.
They were trying to say these are bad guys that are overpaid. And I think, these are hard-working guys that signed on a piece of paper to say, you know what, I will defer some of my salary. I'll put it forward into a pension. This is how pensions work, and that's unfortunate when the company says, yeah, but we don't want to afford that anymore. I remember one letter to the editor, let the unemployed line up and put in job applications. I'm thinking, these are people who don't understand unions got the shorter work week. Unions, we celebrate labor's history here in this city for child labor laws, for shorter work weeks, for job safety. And here we are saying, get rid of this union. There's these unions. What do these people from the outside have? What right do they have to be saying this?
Joel, thanks for doing this as always. Hopefully we can get this thing resolved. Oh, one quick final question. If it was the summertime, would it be over any quicker?
Well, hard to say.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Tom.
Joel Levesque, speaking on behalf of the Moosehead Breweries. Guys, get it resolved. We'll be back.
If you want to stand out today, if you want to deliver a message and look different than the average person, you got to do something different.
I guess I'll start with an opening statement. It is unfortunate that the company has chosen to lock us out, but in no way are we in support of a boycott of our products. In fact, we would encourage all New Brunswickers, those that maybe have drifted away from our product, encourage them to go back and try our products. We're proud of the products we make, and we would like to see maybe an increase in our market share and our sales. So we are encouraging every New Brunswicker to drink our products so that we can get this over with as soon as possible.
Yeah, we have 170 families in the street right now, and we want to look to the future of this as well, to say that we want everyone, we want to prosper when we get back. We're not looking to penalize Moosehead here. And the fact is, the beer that's in the liquor stores right now, we made it. It's a great product. We stand behind it. We drink it ourselves, so drink it.
We knew that they either had to run around the clock to even attempt to keep up, but where they were only attempting to even run one shift a day, we knew it was impossible for them to keep up with demands.
They're not running enough in there with us out to keep us out forever. So when we did go back to work, we wanted people drinking our product. But the Drink It Dry was also saying, putting a little heat on the company too, is If we're gonna run out of product, we're gonna need them back, quicker than anticipated.
This wasn't gonna last forever, and we had to go back and produce beer, and we wanted people to still be drinking our products when we were back making the good products that we make. So that was another aspect of it.
Often when unions look at strategy, there's a tendency of members to think in terms of knee-jerk reaction that, they locked us out, so we'll fix them, we're going to call on a boycott. Instead of calling a boycott, they actually put pressure on the company's inventory.
For every so-called shift of beer they ran, there were 3 behind or 2 behind, or maybe even more than that, because we run quarts, cans, kegs, different size bottles, different size cans, so there's all kinds of things you can throw into the mix.
If it was old labor against new labor in terms of the boycott, thank goodness the new labor won, because that would have, the boycott would have been the dumbest possible thing that they could do. There are other breweries in this province, and they would have loved to have had a boycott at that time.
The local took a responsible approach. They were smart enough not to boycott their product.
They were helping the dispute, putting pressure on the company in the lockout, and at the same time building the long-term capacity of the company, and ultimately of labor and management being able to work together. It was a very clever tactic.
It sort of helped us on the outside see that, it's not a bad company. It's just going through a rough spot here. And it certainly elevated mine, and I think a lot of others, to say, I don't understand why, maybe I'd probably be pretty mad at the company, but these guys are certainly, they're rooting for good beer, and we can support that.
In order to run any business, you need people to do it. We're the people that are content to work for the money that we're working for, to produce a product. It's about striking that balance between a group of people who are willing to do the work, treating them fairly to get the work done. It's as simple as it comes down to.
Certainly a large part of our strategy was to buy the friendship and, if you want to call it loyalty from the security staff, benefited us in spades. And one incident that stuck out in particular was I was in the office one morning and received a phone call from the head of security that there was a truck going into the plant. But he said there was no one down there to have a look inside or hold them up. So when I was on the radio or on the phone with him, I said, well, listen, Gary, can you do me a favor? Can you hold them up till I get some men down there? He said, no problem, I'll hold them up. He said, make sure you're down within 10 minutes though. I said, no problem, I just want to get someone in there to see what's in there on the truck. If we could only hold up trucks for a certain amount of time, then they had to give us the right to go in and do an inventory count inside the truck. So we were able to negotiate a deal to say, we will only hold them up 10 minutes apiece. You allow us enough time to go in and to see what's going in and what's coming out. It was important for us to know, because then by going by the dates the beer was produced, we could tell how much the company was producing. Well, it got to the point when we were holding up vehicles, we were carrying on a lifestyle conversation with the security people there, and they weren't even paying attention to the time. And then, you could see the frustration on their faces. And then she'd say, well, I think it's time. I said, we'd give them a little nudge. Hey, why don't we make this guy wait another 5 minutes? He's not really a pleasant person. All right, you got 5 more minutes. So, and this went on and on and on. And then, of course, the next day, Gary would come up all in a lather about, you got to get more prompt on your times, because you could tell that he got spoken to that night from the company saying, you got to do something about what's going on out there. We earned the trust and the grace from the security staff by treating them with respect, because they had a job to do, we had a job to do, and by mutual respect, they gave us latitudes that we wouldn't have never been able to have.
Week 2, it was kind of organized chaos. And by week 3, we're starting to roll along pretty smooth. The picket captains have picked up their roles. They understand what they got to do. A lot of the agreements with the police and the security force were worked out, so it facilitated it rolling over easy.
I think the horns and the crowd pretty much says it all. I know,
$300 some
we've mentioned before, we've lived in these communities our whole lives. We've promoted our product unceasingly, and this is exactly why we're getting the support that you see out here today.
Well, they had a lot of support from the community because obviously, you're talking about 200 employees. So, they got backup. I try to give them a little bit of support, with gift certificates and free pizzas.
On our second family day, much like the rest of our picket line, we were starting to get a well-oiled machine going. Our first time we had barbecues and it was a little more impromptu. By the second time, we had other locals delivering us their trailer that came complete with huge barbecues, and we had tremendous support in that aspect of it. And then to go along with it, my son's birthday happened to fall on our second family day, so it seemed like the appropriate opportunity to have a birthday cake. And
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ron. It's not going to work now. We're good. Happy birthday to you.
My little guy went right to school the next day and told everyone he'd get to celebrate his birthday on the picket line. Not everyone gets to have 400 people at their birthday party.
The members are the very basis of the union, but beyond that, they've got to have a relationship with the community. They need to be able to tell their story in a way that people understand what's happening.
Local 362 to the community's always been there. I know from a perspective of being a Labour Council president, anytime we've asked for their support and whatever's been going on around town, whether it's to help support another union that is either in a strike or a lockout situation, they come with dollars and more important, the human resources to bolster the line. The local 362 members really show what it is to be family.
Together, working through adverse weather, aggressive employer tactics, and a one-sided media, the confidence of the local members reached new heights. This capacity and solidarity even found its way onto a national stage, with sellout crowds for the top-ranked junior hockey team in Canada, the St. John Sea Dogs.
During the lockout, Moosehead, which is one of the big sponsors of this team, during the intermission, they send their Alpine vehicle out and they have a couple of girls going out and they throw t-shirts and hats and stuff into the crowd during the intermission. Well, on this Saturday night, the truck pulled out, the crowd went into boos. It showed us that we were gaining a little momentum and they were throwing the hats and stuff and the t-shirts into the crowd. Well, they were being thrown back. So, it ended up being something that they stopped doing during the lockout because, it was certainly a show of support towards the union and not the company.
Meanwhile, back on the line, on the most celebrated drinking day of the year, the members were in a festive mood.
1, 2, 3, 4! Say hey Johnny boy, the battle call. United we stand, divided we fall. Together we are what we can be alone. We came to this country, we made it home.
There was a growing feeling among local members that a change was coming. Ski masks were traded for sunglasses, and the moon passed as close to the earth as it had in decades.
After that much time, rather than people getting down because we've been out so long, in actual fact, it was almost a reverse of the timeline because people were getting happier and happier as the weather shifted, as temperatures shifted, as you started to see everything change, and instead of the memberships kind of morale going down, it was just they were even keeled throughout all the worst of the worst, and then when that shift kind of happened, it started to, everyone's spirits were up.
Definitely a special magical bond that happens in those instances, and it's very cool to see it work and see friendships made out of it. And yeah, it's like anything, like war, like being on a team. Those things create a bond that you can't just find walking down the street. Springs are coming.
Not a bad forecast coming up. We can expect to see a mix of sun and cloud today. The winds will be gusting to 50 kilometers an hour, and the high temperature a little on the cool side at +3 degrees.
There's only so much that they could produce and they could have off-site or anything. So the more that people drank, you know, it was just a matter of time. It was just a timing thing that there was going to be nothing left. That's where the strategy of drinking it, you know, came to fruition.
It was a shocking strategy, one that kind of felt nice. I think it won support. It was like, these guys, they're not taking that we hate the company, management is awful, they're horrid. And to take a high road like that in tense times, especially when it was pretty obvious the company took the first move, was pretty impressive. It also was smart. It helped deplete domestic resources, which said, you have to solve this soon because it's going to cost you money.
It wasn't by coincidence that when we found out from security that there was nothing left in the warehouse and that everything that was coming out was made that day, it wasn't too long after that before we got a call.
Well, the company's willingness to come back to the table, we think, was really based on the public support for the local, as well as the solidarity of the membership on the picket line, and importantly, because of the drink them dry strategy that the union had. The company was finally willing to come back to the bargaining table, and as this local has a long history of doing, we were offering up solutions. They proved to be good and formed the basis of the collective agreement.
It was the union that made the stretch, that came up with the solution that was good for the workers, good for the community, and ultimately good for the company.
Well, after 5 weeks of solidarity and a resolve, the answers to the big question are all right here. I think the executive and the negotiating team, did the work that they had to do, which was to negotiate and determine the best offer that the employer was prepared to make.
Unionized workers at Moosehead breweries are back making beer. A 5-week lockout came to an end after the union and company reached a memorandum of agreement. Post-retirement medical benefits were at the center of the dispute.
The local's development of a united front, its creation of community support and strategic decision-making forced the company to include post-retirement benefits for the families of Local 362 in an improved offer. The future for Local 362 is brighter because of their fearless solidarity during the dark, cold days of the winter of 2011.
I remember when we reached a tentative agreement with the company, and we were going back to tell the members of the picket line that we were taking the line down. And I waited around, and everything got cleaned out, and I was kind of the last person to leave, and I was going to lock the door. And finally, I'm out and I'm locking the door, and I'm watching this car, and all of a sudden I'm hearing a horn going, and it went from one end of the brewery right to the other. And we didn't even have a person out there, no sign, no nothing. So this person was still wanting to support our deal, but it was over.
For the worker is working when the back has a
unions out there have to realize that change is inevitable. It's coming, and you're better off to be the authors of said change than you are to be the result of it. If unions as a whole don't take it upon themselves to concisely look and really look at where their problems are and where problems might lie for the companies that they work for, and come with solutions to deal with those, it will spell failure.
If you eliminate a union, you lose this tremendous capacity, and you lose this democratic feedback that I think is important for a society.
Unions can do a lot of things besides just represent workers in their workplace. I think unions have educated people in a way that they wouldn't have been otherwise. I think belonging to a trade union makes a working guy, more politically, plugged in than he would normally be, because he sort of has to be.
It was an experience that I would never take back, even though it was one of the most stressful and one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. But it showed a lot of character in people there, and what was in people's hearts and what was important in life.
What you really learn from these things is, if you don't show up with resolve for these issues yourself and know where you want to be, you are going to fail. This happened for no reason at all other than the fact that they tried to drive a deal down our throat.